Welcome to Makers International, a podcast of makers from 3 countries, 2 continents, and featuring 5 guys separated only by the same language. Here's your host, Richard Morley.
Hello.
Whoa. You ain't hosting your own show. I'm taking over today. Right. Hello.
Hold on a sec.
Wait a minute, Jamie. You're you're gonna host this?
Damn right. He ain't doing his own show.
I need to get more beer. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
know you got to edit it, but I'm still doing it. He ain't doing his own show.
All right.
I better get the swear notepad
Right.
out for the time.
Here we go.
I've got it all prepared and
Yeah.
everything though.
You can get a swear jar if you like, because it's gonna go like that in a heartbeat.
Oh,
Right.
crap.
Here we go. Hello. Right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Makers International podcast. Today we have with you, as always, cute by name, it's Chris Cute.
I'm just gonna say I'm sorry.
You know him as average, but he's actually quite extraordinary. It's Joe Whitaker.
I'll go with that. Cheers, mate. You're right, I'm yeah.
He's been a bit AWOL as of late, and today is no exception. It's Adam Robinson. And it's me, Miss 100% attendance. I'm Jamie Page. And the one in the spotlight, and today, now known by everyone in the community, forever and always, now known as hashtag Seaside Rick, it's Richard Morley.
Where did that Seaside Rick thing even start?
I've no idea.
And
but
how is it me?
Everyone call him Seaside Rick. So every time you see a picture of Richard, hashtag it Seaside Rick. Right.
It's because you're
Right,
always
Richard.
a cockle.
Yeah, right, Richard. You just sit there and sweat for a little while. I'm gonna get on with the thank yous and the sponsors from last week's show. Right, so the shout outs from last week's show go to Make It Soph, Mida Mike, Andrew McQuillan, Shelley Cole, Paul Lockwood, Simon Harmon, Jim Dockrell. Thank you very much for all your lovely comments from our various social media platforms. And on to the sponsors. Today's podcast is brought to you in part by Yorkshire Grit, the Woodturners abrasive paste. For more information, visit www.yorkshire-grit.com. And Chad from Mancrafting, who makes the awesome powder-coated Mancrafting mugs. Links to our sponsors are in the description and can also be found at the webpage at makersinternationalpodcast.com/sponsors. Is that right, Richard?
Yeah, I think so. I'm never going to host this show again. I'm just going to sit back and relax.
We are. We are also going to be giving away one of the Mancrafting mugs today during the show at some point. We have
Awesome.
a question ready. So, yeah. Right. So, Richard,
Yeah.
what do we have to say now? 70 plus insults at the start of every show.
So
Why?
Right. It genuinely does have an origin. The very first show we did, you guys said, I'm not hosting it, you can host it, and I genuinely did not know what to do, because I wanted to make it special, which it appears to have become. And I'd literally just came into the Hangout and I'd just been watching QI on Dave. So for anyone outside of the UK, there's a TV channel and there's a show on it called QI, which is hosted by Stephen Fry, which I'm sure everyone knows. And he has a very kind of upbeat, openly, kind of overtly merry way of starting. And I kind of wanted to, and I thought, that's great, I can do it. And I literally just made it up on the spot. And I think if you listen to the first 2 or 3 episodes, it does change ever so slightly until it kind of settled down into nothing like what Jamie just did. But on every single show, they have 4 contestants in addition to Stephen Fry. And the last one to be introduced is always Alan Davies, who is a hilarious comedian. And it just happened that night, it was you, Jamie, that I got to last. And I didn't even do it consciously. I just did kind of an Alan Davies introduction to you. But actually, if you think about, if you actually watch QI, Alan Davies is the only person who's always there. All the other three always change every now and again. So it kind of works out because you're the only one that's actually always here.
Yeah, right. So now I've got the answer to that. Let's go over to Joe, because I kind of come up with a one-hit wonder for today's show, since I'm going to host it. And it's who's been on the phone with Joe? Which basically means, has anyone phoned Joe and asked him anything?
Isn't this meant to be Chris's bit?
No,
yes, but
it's yours today, but it's yours.
It's you today because I'm a host of the show.
Right, hold on a sec, let me check. Right, yeah, I've got one question come through on my phone, come over on the blower, and it is, at what point do you give up on a project? Now, I wasn't good enough for writing down the name because I'm not used to this job, so I do apologise whoever it was who asked that question, but at least I got it in one way or another.
This is actually a serious question. We're being serious now, right? At what point do you give up on a project? You know what? When somebody says project, I automatically think no, seriously, we're being serious now, right? Because
yeah,
okay,
serious question.
Okay, I'm confused here. Because when you say project, I automatically think idea, because all projects start with ideas. So I guess two things with that. If I've got a lot invested, money-wise into a project, I won't give up on it, because basically I'm a cheap. I just don't give up on it. But if I don't have a lot invested in it, I will give up on my original attempt at trying to make it when I discover that this just isn't working out. But I never give up on the idea. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah.
So that's the only way. I don't know how to answer that. So I don't. I've given up on the actual physical first attempt at making a project, but I've never given up on the idea of one.
Yeah, dare I bring it up? What was it? Was it the chair you done for Izzy's thing?
Yeah, segmented chair, and I still haven't given up on that idea because I think it will work. It's just my first attempt at it was god awful. So
Yeah.
it's like bye bye.
Like me, I'd sooner rather try and repair it and move on somewhere or another. It's like I've joined what woodturners call the funnel club, and I've gone through the bottom of some bowls. Now a normal person may throw them away, but by any means, I'm not normal. And so I've actually kept them bowls, and I'm trying to think of what I can use them for, rather than throw them away. Bear in mind, one of them's Purple Heart, so there's no way I'm throwing that away.
Well, see, that's what I meant by investment. I hear you.
Do you know what I mean? So
that's kind of the Turner's mentality, though, isn't it? And I think Chris did that in a recent project. We have that,
mallet
design change opportunity, whatever you want to call it. If something happens. Unintentional design change. It's a better way of just saying, that's true.
Yeah. The way I look at projects, I'm very much the same in terms of the ideas. And once I've started, literally, like once I've made that first cut or brought the materials, that's it. I'm seeing it through to the end.
Thanks for the plug, Joe. I appreciate it.
I'll give up very quickly on the idea stage. So I'll come up with a ton of ideas and I'll build them in my head. And then if they're not good enough, I'll scrap them. And I don't want to go back to them because I've already given up in my mind. No, it's not good enough kind of thing. So I'll give up in that first initial stage. I could come up with the idea of making a box and I'll build it in my head. And then it's like, well, no, that's not good enough. So forget that. And I won't ever think about it again. And it's closed. But if I've brought the materials or I make that first cut, it goes to the end. If I make a mistake or I don't, I make it work.
There you go.
Mm. I kind of have a naughty corner. So I can't think of a project that I've done that I've never finished. I've got projects that I haven't finished yet, If that makes sense.
It's kind of like your watch list on YouTube.
To be honest, that's probably true. Actually, that probably says a lot about my personality. But you get into a project and you get really excited about it, and you get halfway through it, and something happens, or you have to move on to something else, or whatever it is. Something goes wrong, and it sort of goes on hold, and you put it on the naughty step and go back to it some other time. I've got a few actually that. In fact, if you look at some of my really early videos, you'll see there's like an elephant in the background. That's been on in that space for probably 2 years because I've got to do something with it. I haven't finished it, but it's still there. That needs to be finished. So I
remember we had Sean from SE Woodworks on the show, and you actually had some segmenting, and you still haven't done that, have you?
No, I haven't. No, they're next to the elephant. Because if I put them away, it'll get forgotten about, and then I'll find it when I'm like going to die, and it will never get done. But it'll be there to. Otherwise, it's kind of a reminder to actually. Yeah,
it's the elephant in the room.
Literally, seriously, it's out in the.
Awesome. Hey, Jamie, do you want to go ahead and ask the trivia question now, so that we give people time at least throughout the show?
Why not? So let people have a chance to actually find it, because it's not an easy one. This one.
We got it's a man crafting. We're giving away one of Chad's man crafting mugs, right? Yeah.
Yeah, one of the tumblers. This is obviously a worldwide giveaway. So, right. The question to win a man crafting mug is, which episode was Richard broadcasting from his van?
I was worried there for a minute, really worried.
Okay.
I remember that.
So the question is, what episode was Richard broadcasting from his van?
Yeah, because you actually did host this show an entire hour out in a car park somewhere, Richard, didn't you?
Yes, I did. It was. I was probably closer to where Joe is than I was where I was meant to be. It was on the way back from a show I did down in Exeter. It's like a motorway service station.
You can either come up with the episode. We already have an answer. We already have an answer.
You're kidding.
No, make it Sophie got it. Episode number
Sophie won it.
Episode number 6. It was the Halloween episode. Richard actually lost it. So
we still got to wait for, every time we do a giveaway, it lasts less than a minute.
We have a lucky friggin' list. We have lucky listeners. Sophie, you've got it, girl.
The third answer.
That was the third friggin' answer. Rich McDad said 5.
That shipped off to you.
Simon Harmon said 4, and Sophie went, you know what? I'll go one better than Rich. I'll say 6. And she nailed it.
Sophie, I'll get that shipped off to you.
Awesome. Congrats, Sophie.
I wonder if Sophie put 6 just because Rich puts 5.
I have no idea. It doesn't matter. She got the answer.
And just because they thought, it must be around that sort of area.
Well, we would have taken one of 2 answers. You could have said the Halloween show or episode number 6.
Yeah.
Either one would have been right, but yeah.
Or 106.
Or 106. We weren't going to be picky. I mean, originally, I'll tell you right now, when we talked about doing this trivia question, we talked about making you guys guess how many times Richard has actually said hello. And since none of us wanted to research that and actually come up with a number, we were going to settle on the number 1 billion. And the first person who said 1 billion would have won the mug. But we didn't go that route. So anyway, all right, Jamie, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right.
This is your inaugural hosting of the show. Let's go.
Yeah. And since that lunatic junkie ain't here, I might as well ask his normal question. What is your Batman story?
The Batman story. So how did I get into making and all that sort of stuff? I think I was making stuff from quite an early age, actually. The first I can remember was when I was about 5, maybe 6 at school, and I was in hospital for a couple of days, and I came out of hospital, and my dad had gone up into the loft and dug out this big plastic box of Lego bricks that belonged to my 2 brothers. I've got 2 older brothers. And like the whole time I was off school, recovering from being in hospital, I just played with these Lego bricks, as did they, to be honest. So that was the first thing I remember making myself. But I've always been around other people who make. My uncle, all my life, pretty much all his life actually, has been into making, like the plastic model aeroplane kits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He makes those, but to insane detail. I mean, he makes like really, really big scale aircraft, and he puts like all the obscene tiny details in it. And my brothers did. My dad is a model engineer. He worked on the railways, the real railways in steam days, and then went to model railways. So he's always been building small scale layouts and trains and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of something I've grown up with. And then of course you do woodwork at school and all the other like plastics and a bit of metal here and there and stuff like that. So that's where it really started, I think, from my dad, my uncle, and my two older brothers.
Steve Twidell wants to know how many videos are in your watch later list.
Do you know what? I can actually bear with me, Steve, and I'll tell you because I have got it here.
Oh God!
That was going to be another question.
And
you know what? That should have been the trivia question.
And yeah,
is that to be watched or watched that I haven't deleted yet, in total or unwatched?
In total, go for the total.
Go for the
yeah,
total.
go on.
31.
31.
31. Yeah.
And another question that I wanted to know, and it's not that one, is in total, out of all your shops, how many square feet of floor space do you actually own?
Do I actually own? None. Zero. Nothing.
You've slipped up there, Jamie.
Available to me is what I think.
Or that
you
are
probably
available.
wanted me to ask. I honestly, I don't know. I share a space with
That much, huh?
cats. Well, a rough idea. I share a space with.
Is it bigger than a 2-car garage?
Oh yeah, definitely. Kat's stepdad has the equivalent of a double garage, which has been converted. And actually, I've hosted a couple of the shows from that space, and a couple of them have been featured in videos because that's where my ex-carve lives. Then I also rent a space which is about the size of 4 garages. It's just like an old wooden barn that's rigged to powered. So it's a bit rattly and a bit cold. But that used to be my main workshop. But it's not now because it's a long way from where I spend most of my time.
Jamie, I just want to let you know, Jamie, I just want to let you know, if it ever comes down to a vote, in my opinion, you're our new host. Okay.
You've got my vote as well, actually.
I'm literally digging my nails into my palm here when he said 4-car, size of a 4-car garage.
Yeah,
and he doesn't use it.
Well,
Yeah, I've never seen Joe's eyes twitch so much as when we're like 10 minutes over.
yeah.
I love you very much for that question, Jamie. Thank you.
and actually, if I'm honest, I think that's probably where the stick that Chris gets came from, because a little part of me wishes I was still much closer to that workshop because of the size.
Right.
And I'm kind of a bit jealous.
Oh no!
Yeah.
All right,
No
Richard.
excuse.
I've got a question for you. I've got a question for you. We know kind of your origin story, but tell us briefly, if you wouldn't mind, where did you? What have you done?
Who are you?
No, and I mean, you got out of school. I mean, I know the answer. I know the answer to this question, but I have a question. I have a follow-up question after that. When you get out of school, what did you do?
Right. Firstly, I'm a bit worried about the follow-up question because you're basically leading me into a heffalump tramp, I fear. So I left school at 16, having done my GCSEs, and I went and did 2 years of kind of post school. I don't know what the equivalent is in the States, but here it'd be the equivalent to A-levels, doing a BTEC in aerospace technology. So I always wanted to go into the aero industry, into the Air Force actually at that time. So I did 2 years of that, then finished that, and I didn't know if I wanted to go to university or not. So I got a job working in a couple of shops, which were just dull as dishwater. Then I had a job in a local hospital as a cleaner, and that was such a fun job because when you're like 18, 19, working with nurses every day of the week, it was a dirty job, but I was prepared to do it.
Get his hands stuck in.
So I did that, and then I went into work one day. I genuinely enjoying the job, and it was like, I'm not going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I will go to university. So I then went and did 2 years of an HND, which is kind of the next stage, again in aerospace at Farnborough, which obviously got a very big sort of pedigree in aeronautics and aerospace and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. And from that, I went to Bristol, to the University of the West of England, which is one of these kind of plastic polytechnics trying to be a university. And it all kind of went downhill from there in a way, academically speaking. Because when I was at college in Cambridge and at Farnborough, everything was done by the book. So we would actually work on aircraft. We had a big wind tunnel that you could literally walk inside and fit scale models of cars, like big, it's like an 8-foot diameter wind tunnel. Mm-hmm. And everything was done by the book, and I enjoyed it. And then I went to Bristol thinking it's going to be even better. And we went to one kind of module lecture lesson. It was supposed to be the one practical thing of the year. And the guy gave us this section of wing that we had to reskin. Now, if anyone knows anything about how aircraft are made with all the different components, and you actually put the skin on the top, it's like a skeleton. And then you have these special pegs, which you hold the metal skin onto the components, and they're all drilled out for the rivets. And then you hand rivet them on, countersunk and all the rest of it, pneumatically put on. And we didn't have any of that. And he literally, I'm not joking, the guy went out to his car in the car park, got his toolbox out of his car with all his spanners and wrenches and a hammer and some mole grips, walked in, plonked it on the desk and went, there you go, there's a toolkit. And I was like, you what? And I genuinely thought he was joking, and he wasn't. He was deadly serious. And you just pop rivet on, and I was like, that is not how it's done. And I never went back. I literally left that lesson and never went back, because it occurred to me straight off then that it was just going to be pointless. Mm-hmm. So from there, I kind of bounced around a bit. The whole time from when I left school, or soon after I left school, I joined the TA in the UK. It's like kind of your National Guard reserves thing. So I sort of had a part-time job, and I loved doing that. And I was thinking, do I go regular army? Do I retry for the Air Force? What do I do? And just went from job to job to job, not quite knowing. And then you get settled down and commitments and all the rest of it. And I started working for a pharmaceutical company, of all things. I was meant to be there for 3 days because I'd signed up with this kind of agency. I'd done a few jobs here and there, and they said, oh, you could go to this pharmaceutical company, working in the office. And I was like the guy operating the photocopier and sorting out all these clinical papers and things that have been published in the Lancet and the British Medical Journal and stuff like that. And it was all right, to be fair. It was good money. And I thought, I'll do this for a little while. And then I settled down and had a little girl, my daughter. Mm-hmm. And this was back in 2008. And I started to dislike the job, but I was in the position where I kind of had responsibilities now, and I've got to be kind of grown up and all the rest of it, mouths to feed, all that sort of stuff. But by this time, I intensely hated the job. It was just a nightmare. The boss was just a bully, and I genuinely hated being in the job. And people could tell, because I was known for just being this miserable old bastard in the corner that nobody would speak to, because I didn't want to speak to anyone. 90% of the people working for this company, I hated. I thought, I'll work with you professionally. I'll get the job done. I'll do whatever, as part of my job. But outside of that, just don't even bother asking, because I just want to go home.
Sounds like the podcast.
Yeah. Very much like the podcast, yeah. And
I can be nice to you for an hour, but then please.
Yeah, that's it. Time's up, I'm gone.
Funny that. Where's Alan?
Good point.
For anyone listening, I don't hate any of these guys. These are genuinely top blokes.
But at some point in time, you did go into the military, didn't you not?
Well, I spent, as part of my reserve service, I did 12 months full-time reserve service. So I was basically working for the TA full-time every day of the week. And I was still doing the weekends and the evenings and all that. It was very busy. But I was never a regular soldier, if that makes sense. It was a bit of a complicated scenario, but no, I wasn't. I was never a reg.
I get it.
So there I am hating this job in pharmaceuticals, and a secondment opportunity came up from the sort of the medical area that I was in the manufacturing area. It was a 6-month secondment, it's basically to kind of train someone up to operate the machine so that the drugs could be shipped out on time and in the right quantity. And I absolutely loved it. It literally was the best job in the world. The people there were helpful. They really wanted to be part of the job. It was genuinely part of a team. And you might go in one day and just watch the machine go around. And then you might go in the next day and that batch that you were watching the day before had finished. So you had to clean all the machines. So you had these enormous pressing machines. Because you know, when you have paracetamol you pop it out of the film packet and it's just a hard tablet, isn't it? That used to come to us in these huge, kind of about 3 or 4 foot cubed stainless steel containers just as powder, and we'd feed them in this machine and they'd turn them into tablets. So we'd have to kind of strip the machine down and clean all the components and send bits off to other people to be clean, and then rejig them for another production run, all the rest of it. And it was absolutely brilliant because people would come in, they'd help you, you'd go in and help them, and it was a proper team, and everyone genuinely cared about what they were doing. But it was only for 6 months, and I knew that there was a really good chance after these 6 months that I'd have to go back to the hellhole that was where I'd come from. And it happened. We went back end of the year, back in the office, come sort of January the 2nd or whatever it was, and it was even worse than when I left, and I hated it even more. And in the interim, I'd had a life change, and the relationship I was in broke down. I'd moved on, separated and all the rest of it. So I no longer had the sort of the same, what's the word? Kind of necessity of staying, because I no longer had quite the responsibility of food on the table and breadwinner and all the rest of it. And one day, it was about February, it was about this time of year actually, it was a Thursday night, and I used to have to drive. I was staying at Cat's, which was about 40-minute on a good day, like an hour and a half plus in rush hour drive down the main road with about 1 billion other people. So I had to get up really, really early to be at work on time. And the night before it snowed, we had about 6 inches of snow. And it's kind of little windy country roads to get to the main road to drive. At 5:30 in the morning, I opened the curtain, 6 inches of snow, and I'm like, not a chance. I'm never going to get out of the road, let alone onto the main road. I'll die before I kind of get to work. And I made the decision, I'm not going into work today. So I called in, and there was a big hoo-ha with my boss, blah, 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 blah. And long story short, I was on the phone to him, and he said, why aren't you at work? I told him, and he went, that's not a decision you can make. I was like, hang on a second. That's exactly the decision I can make. I've just made it, and we can talk about this on Monday, which we did. So there was a meeting on the Monday morning with me and my boss and personnel, like the people from personnel and all the rest of it. And I put my case forward. He put his case forward, not quite as well as I did, shall we say. And then I got wind of another opportunity for another secondment back where I was like, I so want that, because I really wanted to go back and do the manufacturing side, because I literally loved it. I genuinely would get up and I'd spring out of bed. I wanted to go to work. It was that good.
Right.
And then I was chatting to somebody, and they said, well, actually, they're only secondments, and they're not happening for 6 months, and they're probably only going to be for 6 months. And this was about 3 o'clock on our whatever day a week it was. And I was like, right, okay, so if I go for it, it's not going to happen for 6 months if I get it. And if I do, it might only be for 6 months. So there's a good chance, even if everything goes well, I'm still going to be back here in this same spot in 12 months' time. I was like, no, that ain't happening. And I literally just went back to my desk, Googled resignation letters, filled out a template. And my boss wasn't at work that day. because he was off on another meeting somewhere, and his boss wasn't there either. So I just printed it off and took it straight down to personnel and went, there you go, that's me gone. Went back into my office, called everyone together. I said, just handed me notice in. You've got a month. And it was like that. And then a month later I left, and I was like, oh my God, have I made the right decision? Because I'd sort of, by this time I'd already got a bit of a business going on the side, and it was the only thing that kept me sane for about nearly 4 years before this point. And
all right, well, I'm gonna interrupt you right here, because at this point in time, after listening to all that, we have a question that I think is very pertinent to everything that we've just heard. Jim Dockrell wants to know, what is your favorite recreational drug?
It's probably ibuprofen, but I wouldn't call it recreational. If I throw an ankle or something like that. But when I worked in manufacturing, Chris, you'll know this. If I say to you hillbilly heroin, you know what I'm talking about, do you?
Yes, I do.
Part of the pharmaceuticals that I was responsible for was oxycodone.
Well, wait, hold on. Why did you know that I would know that?
Because, because not personally, but there was a big thing in the States for anyone in the UK that kind of is. It was massive. It was absolutely just like film stars were taken. And the only reason I know about it was because it was one of the.
You was their dealer.
He was the manufacturer. That's where he got the nickname Seaside Rick.
down on the boardwalk selling oxycodone.
It's also why he likes green tools. Anyway, go ahead.
We've actually got a few more questions as well. Andy Pugh has got a question for Richard. He says, what making skills do you want to learn or develop?
I really want to develop welding. I did it at college. And I've never done MIG, but I really, really want to learn TIG welding, because when I was at college, we never got around to doing TIG, probably because I left before we got to that part of the course. But we did a lot of stick welding and a lot of brazing, which is kind of similar. It's the two-hand, well, stick welding is not, but when you're brazing, you've got the filler rod and the torch, and it's kind of a two-handed affair rather than, the wire. So I really want to do TIG. It's been in the back of my mind for ages, but I haven't got the space for a welder, unfortunately.
I'm right there with you. I mean, that's all I've done. I've done stick welding, Richard, and I've done brazing, and that's about as far into metalworking as I ever got. I do have a question from our good friend Ragtie, if you want, and take this off onto more of a social thing. And God love him, and he wants to know. He says, "I'd like to ask Richard if he has any extracurricular activities, such as sports, fishing, perhaps camping, things that you like to do, and if so, how often do you get to do them?" Because he knows that you're self-employed and wonders if you ever have the opportunity to, carve out some time for yourself to go do those kinds of things.
Yeah, being self-employed is probably the quickest way to cure any kind of illness and sick day tendencies. But I don't very often get the chance, but I love to go gliding. My eldest brother, is a gliding instructor, qualified gliding instructor. So I've been up with him quite a bit. I don't get the chance to do it very often, maybe once or twice a year, most years, but not that often. That's why I really look forward to that. I set aside a weekend to go flying with him. Other than that, probably camping, but it's not really camping. Cat bought one of these folding caravans. It's like a caravan in a box, and you tow it off and unfold it. I love getting away in the folding camping.
Didn't at one point in time, didn't you talk about maybe doing redoing that camper or fixing it up or doing a video series on it? And did you do it and just not videotape it, or did you just not get around to it yet?
No, it's one of those kind of projects that hasn't been started. We did a very little because she bought it last summer and we went out in it loads, but in the time span there wasn't very much time to do anything. So all I've done in there is I think I changed a few sockets from plugs to plugs with USBs because everyone's running out of plug points to charge all the kids' phones and tablets and God knows what else.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there is quite a bit of that to do, some little kind of cupboards, because it all folds down. For a little quick story. There's like this wardrobe, which is next to the door, and it comes apart. It's just a box that kind of bolts onto a set of drawers next to it, and you have to kind of take it out and fold it and pack it in the special place. So otherwise it don't all fit. It's a big jigsaw puzzle. And it goes in the middle. And I think we must have had this thing like an hour, and Kat had to go in to push some thing up to hold part of the roof up, and all the cushions lay on top of it. And she walked across all the cushions and literally just went boom, and she just stepped straight through the panel in the middle of the wardrobe. So that was a quick Leatherman job, a temporary fix and a bit of super glue. But now that means I've got to make a new one from scratch.
What about dress up?
I love to dress up.
Oh, jeez. Wait a minute. Hold on. Jamie, let me click on you because
Cannot be unseen.
I'm sorry.
No,
it's one of those things you just can't unsee.
I apologise to anyone who now can't unsee that. I'm actually quite torn by that picture. In one respect, it is very embarrassing, obviously, but in another, just to sort of try and explain myself, really, that was taken by Kat on a weekend when I had my daughter 4 years ago, maybe, and she did all that. She came in early one morning and she got like this little Easter basket of those little hair bobble things for doing ponytails, and I can't do ponytails on kids for toffee. I'll quite happily admit that. And they basically, Kat and my daughter just put all those things in my hair because, well, I've just had a haircut like a week ago, but you know what it was like before then.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're busy, you don't get a haircut. So that picture is me being the best dad in the world. So embarrassing, but proud.
No, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. I think it's actually kind of adorable that you let your daughter do that to you while you were sleeping. It's like
I actually wasn't asleep.
It looks like you were.
So, while you are playing dress up, boxers or briefs?
I thought when you said dress up, that was the question you were going to ask. I thought, well, I didn't think I was going to dodge the question. I'd actually prepared an answer for this, and I quite like to. Do you know the old Borat mankini?
Oh dear!
Oh god!
They're
I actually own
functional,
one.
comfortable, and got to keep your junk in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, do we need to credit Borat in the description of this? Because if I do, I got a Google search ahead of me.
But it's at Sacha Baron Cohen.
Don't want to look at your search engine afterwards.
It's nice.
Oh no.
What was the other? Oh, we had a question from Make It Safe, which is a double-barreled question. She said, "What is Richard's favourite Disney film, and are we going to see a future project from that film?"
Robin Hood is my favourite.
The old Fox one.
Yeah. Ooh, the lally. That is definitely my favourite Disney film of all the Disney films, but obviously it's one of the classics. For the new ones, I kind of want to say Frozen because it's like the best film, but I've got a lot of fond memories watching that with my daughter because she was that very sort of early age watching it.
Is that the one with Elsa in it?
Yeah.
It is the one. That is the one. Yes, we'll say more about that.
Joe. You have to. We need to give the folks who are listening to us know there is a story with Richard and Elsa that I'm not sure it would be appropriate for us to bring into the forefront. But Joe, if you want to, I'm game. You're the one who edits this thing. If you can do your magic, then go right ahead.
I don't know if I'm the best one to actually explain it. I think if anyone's going to give the incriminating evidence, it should be Richard.
I'm happy to talk about it, and I'll leave it to your discretion in the edit, because it's just one of those things. It was not me. I'd like to stress that from the start.
Right. No, we believe you. It was a friend. It was a friend.
So last year we were lucky enough. We scrimped and saved every penny, back of the sofa, bottom of the drawers, and all the dusty corners and everywhere. And we saved up, and we managed to kind of cobble together a trip to Disney in Orlando. And whilst we were there, the only time we could go happened to be in Easter, which is over the time when my daughter had her birthday, and she wasn't in a position to come with us. So I had to sit down, I had to deal with all the guilt and everything of, do I go, don't I go, and all the rest of it. Anyway, we went. And because it was her birthday while we were there, you can go around and you can meet like the princesses and the characters and all the rest of it. They're awesome, and we got them to do like a little video of wishing her a happy birthday and sorry she couldn't be there and all the rest of it. So there's me, this nearly 40-year-old bloke, on my own, because nobody else was up for queuing for hours to meet all the princesses. And I literally did, over the course of 3 days, I covered about a dozen Disney princesses. And one day I managed to get 7 Disney princesses in with this little video clip, and one of them was Anna and Elsa. So you stand there, and then because you queued up for ages on your own, looking a bit kind of wrong, I think is probably the only word, meeting all these Disney characters. The photographer there's like, well, you queued this time, and you have the photograph. So I'm standing next to Elsa, and she kind of takes my arm as if, when you do like the whole kind of prom photo shoot thing. And so she grabs my arm, but she sort of was a bit assertive, and I wasn't sort of prepared for it. And she just pulled me in, with the costume and my arm. And there was a very close, there was a moment. I think we both felt it. We definitely both felt it, because when you look at the photos, there's this kind of not warm embrace. That kind of sounds even worse, but there's this sort of like photograph of us quite close together, shall we say? And then the next photos are us getting slightly further apart.
But frozen, melted.
So that was kind of a weird moment, but never broke character for a second, professional to the end. What was funny was Kat and her 2 kids were like the other side of Epcot doing whatever it was. And I get over there, and when you go, you have like these, they're like watches, and the photographers scan these magic bands, so the photos all end up on like an online account. And Kat's got this account on her phone, and she's getting notifications of all these photos coming through. When we eventually meet up again, she says to me, so what happened with you and Elsa? And I was like, it wasn't me.
Busted.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, let it go.
I can't be told to let it go.
Considering Elsa was how do we put this? A well-endowed woman? Yeah, I guess that would be that would be a correct pronunciation, Joe. He got busted.
Yeah, there was something there. Maybe if the situations had been different.
That's it. In another life.
Anyway, moving on. The Wood Yogi once says, "Is there anything Richard doesn't know about routers?"
Yeah, loads. There's always something new to learn, and anyone that says otherwise is
boring.
Come
on, seriously.
Seriously, there's loads to know about the router. I know enough to safely experiment, if that's probably the best way to put it. But no, I don't know everything.
Did you or did you not have an incident, let's say, with a router at one point? Didn't a bit come flying out or something? Yeah,
that was a few years ago, and it was a 1/2 inch diameter cutter, but it was a long one. I think it was about 2.5 inches long. So the cutter itself is just over 4 inches long, so it's a reasonable size. And I was working outside on my own, and I'd put the cutter in, or changed cutters, done what I needed to do, done the collet nut up tight, sort of finger tight, and then I got distracted and started working again, but I hadn't done it up with the spanner. It was literally just finger tight, and I was cutting some mortises in something for something, I can't remember what. Anyway, I started noticing that the mortise was getting deeper and deeper than it should, and I was already at full plunge. I was like, what's going on here? And I lifted the router up on its plunge, which gave it enough room for the cutter to clear the work, and it came out of the machine, and it was still on, so it was still spinning at 28,000 RPM. And this cutter, it came out of the work, detached from the router. It flew out away from me, and it landed on the patio concrete about 4 foot in front of me. It bounced up, hit the back of the house between the back door and the window for the kids' playroom. Went up, because it's obviously bounced off the floor, it's traveling up, came back towards me off the wall and landed about a foot in front of where I was standing. And there was not a mark on the cut. How the cutter wasn't just like all chipped and shredded with all the carbide from sort of 3 bounces on concrete. There was no visible damage to the cutter. Obviously it was trash, so that went in the bin. Changed the cutter, changed the trousers first, changed the cutter, and put it in the machine. But it didn't matter what I did, how tight I could do it with the spanner, the collet would not grip on a new cutter, so that had to be changed as well. I was very, very lucky. If you got to keep those machines, you've got to keep your wits about you.
Typical maker. Typical maker here, because he's not worried about the window, the ceiling, the walls. It's like, you know what? The router bit is still in great shape.
They're all they're saying over in the chat, Sean from SE Woodworks and Al from Al's Hack Shack, are saying 1/4 inch bit, 1/4 inch collet, and 6 mil bit, 6 mil collet.
Yeah, there are 6 mil shanks are available, as are the cutters, but you can't swap them around. They've got to be matching parts.
Richard, we've got to wind this down a little bit, so I'm going to leave this last question up to you. And the question is simply this: is there something that you want to tell us, or anything that you would like people to know about you that perhaps we don't know about you, or hasn't been presently put forward, or anything? If not, then I have a compound question, but I'm afraid to ask it, because brevity and you are like friggin' polar opposites. You can't wrap things up in 10 minutes. So I'm just curious if there's anything that you would like people to know about Richard Morley that we don't currently know, or just something you'd like to put out there philosophically. And now that's kind of scary to think of, but I'll throw it out there for you.
No.
Okay. All right. So here comes the compound question. And please, Richard, try to keep it brief. The compound question is, Richard, do you own an inexpensive tool?
Loads, yeah. I've got loads of cheap tools.
Okay. And if you do, which is your favorite and why? Because the premise of the question, you have to understand, is that people know that you absolutely are in love with Festool products, and anybody who owns them would be. So that's totally understandable. Nobody's criticizing you for being, a snob. They just want to know, do you actually own something that the average Joe might actually own and use? And if so, what is it, and why do you like it so much? Because
that's kind of an easy question, actually. My favorite cheap tool is a little kind of Western style tenon dovetail gent saw. It's about, I think, 8 inches long. I did a video on how to sharpen a tenon saw, and it would cost me £5. It's an old one. It's like an antique one. It cost me about £5, something like that, and it's brilliant. And I love it because the teeth are nice. It cuts beautifully. It's easy to work with. It's brilliant. I love it. There you go.
I've actually got a bit of a fun fact about Richard as well. I've done a little bit of research.
Define fun. He thinks it's fun.
He
making fun.
Yeah, making fun. Well, I don't know if you call it making fun, but he actually uses Baltic birch plywood as firewood.
I have, yes. I've used all sorts. I've burnt teak as well.
All right, Richard, another quick one, and then we're going to leave it alone. Jim Dockrell wants to know, Richard, are you teaching your daughter anything in the shop?
I have done. She does. She's got a very, very short attention span, but she loves getting on the CNC and watching that, because it's kind of playing with the computer and all the rest of it. what else is she? She's been on the lathe as well. She's sort of turned. I think she turned a pen for her mum. It's like a Mother's Day or Christmas or some gifty type thing. So yeah, the odd bit when I can.
Awesome.
Everyone's begging me to ask you this question, so I'm going to have to do it. Jim Dockrell wants to know: are you a breast, leg man, or other part of the chicken?
I'm not fussy. Actually,
Well, we've got a problem at the moment. KFC's got none.
That good old Colonel.
Right, it's I think it's time to start wrapping up the show. So,
Thank God.
Joe, have you got any shout outs?
Yeah, I've got a shout out this week for a change, and it's John Clothier. Now, John does a lot of wood turning, and something that stands out about his videos has got to be his explanation. He goes into great detail, makes it very easy to follow, and just makes it look so like easy to attempt. The finished piece is beautiful. Well, I've got the link in the description. Check it out. It's made a wall hanging. Of course, wood turning incorporates dyes, wood burning, gold leaf, loads of brilliant techniques. Well worth watching. Links in the description. Get subscribed if you haven't already. Fantastic channel. Great maker. That's John Clothier.
Yeah, his channel used to be the Woodworking Shed, if I'm not mistaken, and he's just kind of rebranded himself. He's doing some real good stuff. Yeah,
Brilliant
what about you,
channel.
Chris?
Yeah, actually, I do. Andy Berkey put out a video early this week, and I think it's I could be wrong, and Andy, if I am, forgive me. I think it's like episode 35 he put out. Andy Berkey's "Give Me a Minute." And the reason why that's my shout out this week is just because I am really in love with that whole idea of a 1 minute video to pass on a quick tip and then be done with it is friggin' genius. I mean, Andy, I just think that's great. And Andy's also started up another episode thing that he does on the show. It's called Berkey on a Shop Stool or something like that, where it's kind of like a shop talk, but he doesn't always talk about shop. It's just kind of a personal thing, so people can get to know who he is and what he's about. Anyway, so I saw his "Give Me the Minute" this week, and I went, you know what? That's my guy. I got to give him some love. So Berkey's "Give Me a Minute" would be my shout out this week.
Very cool. What about you, Richard?
Unsurprisingly, I've been watching a lot of the Ron Swanson sketches. I've never watched Parks and Rec, but I keep seeing these best of Ron Swanson's, and it's absolutely hilarious. But that's not my shout out. My shout out is actually the Festival UK YouTube channel.
Oh God!
No, seriously, bear with me.
It was going so well.
Sorry, Jamie.
There goes the Makita hookup we were looking for. Go ahead.
Now you know the Domino 500. If anyone knows, they have two domino machines. The big one they brought out a couple of years ago, like these knockdown fixings that you can use with it. So if you're making a bed, you can make it like disassemblable. But they've just brought out some for the small domino as well. So if anyone is a domino user, that could be something. It's kind of a newsflash more than a shout out. But, yeah, you've got KD fixings for domino.
There are so many people that can relate to that, Richard. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Never be ashamed. Never be ashamed of the tools you've got, whatever level they
No,
are.
I'm not saying be ashamed. I'm just like, well, it's just funny. It's so you. It's so.
The good old green and grey.
Oh my God.
Gold. Anyway, what
about you, Jamie?
Yeah, my shout out. My shout out today is Laura Kampf. She took a broken aeroplane trailer that she found in the trash. I tell you. And basically, what she done is she gave it a bit of Laura love, if you like. So yeah, she turned it around and basically turned it into a workshop cart. She added a few drawers and just to keep her pens and paints and bits of is it a Leatherman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just basically keep her bits and bobs for her shop inside of it, and it's obviously saved from it being chucked down the dump, So, but yeah, it's come out pretty cool. So yeah, Laura Kampf is my shout out.
She stole that idea from Joe in the shed he was making, didn't she?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
I still need to put the wheels on mine.
Yeah.
You need to figure out a way to call it a former airplane too, and then you're hooked up.
That's it.
I guess so. Yeah. Out
Get
of the
it from
wings
the
that
trash.
out of the airplane that Richard refused to fix the wings on.
Yeah.
Actually, you've just reminded me of something on Instagram. Just waffle on for a second, because I need to find this guy on Instagram that I found yesterday. It was
Just waffle on.
Okay, just
Phil
like-
talk.
Where waffle on your spotlight.
I've got nothing left to say.
Well, we can all. What should we just talk about Richard?
Yeah. So how many hellos actually has Richard said? Do you think?
I've no idea, but don't forget to keep calling him #Seaside Rick from now on.
Yeah. Every
He
time.
does.
Every,
He does.
go to his YouTube channel and just #Seaside Rick. On his Instagram, which is Brain Fizz. Seaside Rick. On his Facebook, he really won't mind.
We need to be the first search. If you search in Google Brain Fizz, we need Seaside Rick to be the suggested search next.
Yeah,
Then you know you've won.
get it trending.
Let's build that SEO up.
Just
Rick,
something
that's
else
what we
to
gotta do.
destroy any chances of building a brand.
And I could be wrong, but I think the whole Seaside Rick thing happened actually in one of our earlier episodes where we started talking about a gentleman who may have been gender neutral.
What? Thanks, guys.
And I think that's how Seaside Rick. Because you say Seaside Rick, and I think of some guy in a Speedo
Sound like Brighton or something like that.
that walks with his pinky out. It's like, I could be wrong. Anyway,
when it I was writing Seaside Rock and I accidentally wrote Seaside Rick.
it may have been.
No.
It may have been.
Whatever it is, it's not making the edit. This is straight out.
So this is why you should watch the show live, because once Joe gets to it, Mum can listen, and that's no fun.
That's the trouble.
I'm really struggling to find this thing.
I get the questions.
Oh well, Richard, we're about out of time, buddy. I hate to tell you.
There was looking all the descriptions. There was this guy. He was building like scale model. They were more art than models of aircraft out of sheet metal, and he'd got this P-38 Lightning, and it was amazing. Absolutely. I mean, this thing must have had a wingspan of about 4 foot, and it was just brilliant. And I'm trying to find it on Instagram so I can tell people, because it got loads of things. And this kid had welded together parts from, I think they were M16 bits, and he'd welded them all together as this Apache helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
It would literally, like, amazing, absolutely amazing. I'm desperately trying to scroll through my feed. I can't find it, but I'll make sure it's in the notes. If you're interested in kind of artwork, aeroplane-y stuff and metal, it was just brilliant.
Awesome.
As soon as we go off air, I'll find it. But
Of course. Yeah. So let's not waste their time, and let's just end this thing.
It's always the way.
I will find it.
Right. Yeah. It's time to wrap up the show. Joe's giving the look as always. So from me and the other three, and Alan, who's not here again, thank you very much for tuning in. Sophie, I shall get the cup off to you. Congratulations for winning. And until next week, take it easy.
Have a great week, everybody.
See you next week.
See you later.